Hi, welcome back to the Megalamukos. It's been a while giving shiurim in Sefer Yetzirah, and it's brought me back to my favorite place in the universe. And you may know that place. It's the invisible Aleph, the Aleph that precedes the base of Bereshis. And I've come across a discovery. I considered a discovery. I had it a couple years ago. I never got to share it. So today I'm sharing my discovery. It's called Aleph in Mitosis. Okay, and to remind everybody what mitosis is, we're talking about cell division. We're talking about the reproduction of cells. All of us are made up of millions of cells, not only people, but animals and plants. And they're constantly reproducing. Cells are splitting, and old cells are dying, new cells are being produced. And the process is called mitosis. There's this multi-stage process. And mitosis is the process by which a cell replicates its chromosomes. That's the genetic material in the middle that tells it to be what it is, and then segregates them. Think about the double helix of DNA. And so there's these pairs of nucleic acids, and they're splitting from each other. And then there'll be separate two versions of the same thing, producing two identical nuclei in preparation for cell division. I'm actually going to show it to you live, a video of that at the end of my presentation. But let's bring it back to the Sefer Yetzirah, to Divrei Torah, to the invisible Aleph, okay? So Aleph, it's number one. It's Alufo Shel Olam. It's the chief. It's a silent letter. Doesn't say anything. You don't know it's there, but it's there. It's everywhere, okay? The Aleph is alone, but it contains everything. And like the Torah says about the very first day of creation, it doesn't say Yom Rishon, it says Yom Echad. The first day of creation, it's Yom Echad. The angels haven't been created yet. God is essentially alone. So the Aleph, the chief, is alone and yet contains everything in potential. I have other videos about the shape of the letter Aleph, and that there's five well-known shapes of the Aleph. I'm going to talk about each one of them right now. And I have a beautiful idea called the electron cloud Aleph, that these five different suros, these five structures of the Aleph, all exist at the same time, like the electron cloud model of the atom, that the electron can't be pinpointed where it is at any time, past the Bohr model of the atom, the electron cloud. So these Alephs, particularly the Aleph, the invisible Aleph at the beginning of Bereshis, are all the time in a state of flux between the potentiality of creation and the act of creation. Okay, so there's this kinetic energy that's all the time infusing life and shefa into the universe. So let's review the five forms of the Aleph. The Megala Mukos himself speaks about them in a number of places. The word or appears five times. Yihior, Vayior, Vayar Elokim es or Kitoi, Vayavd Elokim ben or lechoshech, Vayikra or Yom. So five times the word or, which is an Aleph word for light. So there's five forms of the Aleph. The first one we'll talk about. I have a picture of an Aleph here. Think of the top part of the Aleph, okay, which is essentially always a Yud in all five of these formats. The middle part is a Vav, or we'll see two Vavs. And the bottom part, that's the one that's dynamic. That's the one closest to creation. Creation only really begins with the base of Bereshis. Hashem started the Torah with the base of Bereshis, Lashon Bracha, Lashon Bria. The word Bereshis can be picked apart to be Barashis. He created the six edges of the axes, the X, Y, and Z axis, or the six sides of a cube. So three-dimensional reality is created from the base of Bereshis. But we're talking about what happened before that creation in the Aleph, which is invisible, but precedes the base of Bereshis in the Torah, Kaviyachol. So we're talking about that Aleph. The top of it is always a Yud, and a Yud is a speck of energy, okay? A Vav is a connection. A Vav means a hook in Hebrew. And the bottom part in the first version is a Dalid, okay? Dalid is this, but here it's an upside down Dalid, okay? Dalid is like the X and Y axis, so it's this. And so what we have is a point, a line, and a plane, okay? So the Aleph has in it the 0 dimensions, 1's dimensions, 2 dimensions, leading to three-dimensional reality in the base. And gematria of Yud Vav Dalid is 20. It's the word Yud, Yud Vav Daled, okay? Which is, of course, the 10th letter and the first letter of Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke, very important letter, a primal letter. And the gematria is 20. And 20 is associated with Kaf, Keser Elyon. And this is the first of the spheroids above all of them. And again, it's like an invisible one. It's associated with the Aleph. The Aleph is Ois Aleph Lamed Pei, which is Pele, Pei Lamed Aleph, which is wondrous, something beyond us. Mufla Mimcha, Al Tirosh, places that we can't really fathom. So that's the first version of Aleph, which depicts the evolutionary process of developing from a point line plane into three-dimensional reality, and it's associated with Keser Elyon, with the Pele, okay? The second Aleph we'll talk about is Yud Vav Yud, okay? So that's a nice one because it's a symmetrical Aleph. And so you have a Yud above and a Yud below, connected by the firmament. The firmament has upper waters and lower waters. And so here's the upper waters and here's the lower waters, connected by divided by the firmament, by Yavdel Elokim. And of course, the gematria of Yud and Vav, or Yud Vav Yud, is 26. So that's really closely associated between this Aleph and the Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke, okay, because gematria 26. So very important Aleph. Third Aleph, Yud Vav Reish. Okay, the letter on the bottom without a chupchik is a Reish, a curvy letter. Again, it's an upside down Reish. Yud Vav Reish. So again, to reiterate the idea that below the Vav, the letter below the Vav is giving character to that which is going to follow, to the base and to the Bria and to that which is below the firmament. So Reish is a dynamic letter. Chazal teaches us about the letter Reish that it can be Rash or it can be Rosh. So it can be on top, the head, or it can be Rash, the impoverished one. For example, the word Tirosh. If you drink wine, it can raise you up to high levels, or it can impoverish you if you get addicted. And the word Yisrael, Shem Yisrael, has Yesh, Ve'al, and the Reish in the middle, that Klal Yisrael, Bizman she'oisim ritzonu shel makom, ein kol uma b'lashon sholetes behem, u'bizman she'ein oisim ritzonu shel makom, they're the lowest of the low, that they're gathering barley between the dung of animals, of Arabs, Gemara and Ksubis. So the Reish has these two aspects. It's dynamic. It could be the top or it could be the bottom. Okay, and I want to remind you that the number 216, the gematria of this Aleph, Yud Vav Reish, Reish is 200, so that leaves 216, is 6 cubed, because 6 times 6 is 36, times 6 is 180, plus 36 is 216. So what is 6 cubed? Well, we were talking about the 6 directions of north, south, east, and west, and up and down, the 6 faces of the cube, or the 6 edges of the X, Y, and Z axes. So 6 cubed is about taking the three-dimensional world to the next level, okay? So it's about transcendental, power and dynamism. So that's Yud Vav Reish, okay? We're on the fourth Aleph, and this Aleph is Yud Vav Vav. Yud, Vav, and then down at the bottom, a Vav, which sort of looks like in the picture that we're looking at. So Yud Vav Vav has the gematria of 2 Vavs is 12, and 10 is 22. 22, we're back at the Chaf base, Ois of the Aleph base, so that's the power through which all of creation came into being. God spoke and created the Aleph base, a lavush of Aleph base, and thereby created the world. So that's an Aleph that has a creative capacity. The Vav on the bottom, again, remember that Vav is a hook. It's a connector. It's a conjunction, the conjunction meaning and or, and maybe even sometimes but. So that Vav on the bottom is, again, leading and connecting to everything else that will exist below the Aleph. And the last Aleph, which I want to speak about today, this is really the topic of today's shiur, is an Aleph, and we didn't expect this, that has in it 4 letters, not 3. And you may not see it so clearly, but think about the top Yud and the bottom Yud, but the line in the middle could be comprised of 2 Vavs, okay, parallel Vavs, okay? I think they're parallel. I mean, they could be like this, but I think they're parallel. So then the gematria becomes 16 on top and 16 on the bottom. And that already makes me think of teeth, 16 on the top and 16 on the bottom. And together they're Lamed Beis, 32. And Lamed Beis, so that's the first Mishnah in Sefer Yetzirah, the Lamed Beis Nesivois Pliois Chochma, the 32 paths of wisdom through which Hashem created the world, Chakaku Bara Soilamoi. And it's Lev, it's the heart of everything. And of course, it is connected to teeth, and you got to floss your teeth to keep your heart healthy. But we're talking about Lamed Beis as pathways of wisdom and creation. And today, what I want to share is a little bit of a scientific idea from biology about mitosis, because we now have, again, we've had a symmetrical Aleph before when we had Yud Vav Yud, but now we have Yud Vav, Vav Yud. So we have symmetry, and we have two of the same thing, one on the top and one on the bottom. So we could conceptually separate them and create new ones, okay? So that's what today's shir is about, primal mitosis, the replication of data in preparation for creation, because remember, the Aleph we're talking about is the invisible Aleph prior to the base of Bereshis. I remind you of a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. I have a picture of lots of different people. No two people are exactly alike. And that's praise to God. Lahagid gdulaso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She'adam tovea kama matba'ot bechotem echad v'chulan doimim ze lezeh. If a person mints coins using a stamp, so all the coins will come out identical, okay? Umelech malchei hamalachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu tava kol adam b'chotamo shel adam harishon ve'ein echad mehem doim lechaveiro. Hashem created one man. Bishvil zeh Adam nivra yechidi. That's the Mishnah. Adam was created by himself. Ultimately, Hashem gave him Chava from himself. And this is really about DNA, presumably, that Hashem created all the vast possibility of mutation and diversity within human DNA, so that from a single person, a single couple, we have essentially infinite variety in the human species. Okay, no two people are alike. We know all kinds of people. We see there's commonalities and certain characteristics and types, but everybody's different, even identical twins. So that's about the koyach of Hashem and the system that he used in creating man as this unique individual with capacity to have offspring, each one different from the other. Okay. So as I said, the Aleph precedes the creation story, and just to show you that in a graphic way, there's drash about the base. The base of Bereshis, is a base Rabati. It's a big base. And Lama base. Why does the Torah start with base? Elama base zeh yesh bo shnei uktzin. So this picture is pretty good. You can see two protruding things from the base, one on top, and then one at the bottom of the base. Okay, those are called two uktzin. We'll call them two tails. Echad milamala, echad milamata mechorav. One on top and one on the bottom at the back. Oimrim lebase. We might say, the onlooker might say to the base, which is the housing of creation, Mi bara'acha, who created you? And base, v'hu mar'eh b'uktso milamala, this one created me. He's pointing upwards at his creator. Omer zeh shelemala bira'ani, the one above created me. Umashmo, and so the second question is, okay, what's that one above you called? V'humar elahem, base points backwards from the bottom and says, Mashmo, Uhumar elahem be'uktso shel achara ve'oimer Hashem shmo. Okay, I read it as Aleph shmo. Okay, I should write that as Aleph shmo. So this is base testifying to his creation through Aleph. And so we're talking again, as I said, about the invisible Aleph that precedes the base of Bereshis. And here we are. I've quoted Sefer Yetzirah, Belamed Beis Nesivois Pliois Chachma Chakak Hashem Es Oilamo. And I've given you a nice big Aleph here that has a Yud Vav and a Vav Yud. The straight line, the diagonal line in the middle of the Aleph, which we can think of as the Vav, we could think of it, I've drawn a line through it to turn it into two Vavs. So you have Yud Vav above and Yud Vav below, a symmetrical letter. And let me show you. Mitosis in action, okay? So here we go. We're going to watch mitosis. We're looking at the chromosomal, the genetic material in the midst of a cell, of an animal cell under intense microscope. Lo ra'u avotenu. Our forefathers never saw this stuff. Look how it's separating and going off to one side. And now the one cell turned into two cells, okay? And so now there's a total replication of what was. One has turned into two, and yet it's kept its basic genetic message intact. Okay, so truly a wondrous thing. Let me get back to my presentation to put closure on it, that we're talking about a process that began before the base of Bereshis, when everything was still in the invisible Aleph. But we're looking at the Aleph now as a dynamic electron cloud. It's full of energy, movement, action. And we're looking at an Aleph comprised of a Yud, Vav, Vav, Yud, and the two Vavs separate from themselves and replicate themselves. So now you have two Alephs. And so now you could move from there and create more letters. And I'll just say one more idea about that from the Leshem brings it a number of times about the word Hashem Tzvakos. And that Tzvakos is used in the Sefer Yetzirah. Why is Hashem called Hashem Tzvakos? Tzvakos means legions, because with each letter of the Yud Ke Vav Ke, you can create all the other letters. Let me spell that out a little bit. The Yud, it starts with just a single point of the Yud, but Yud is written Yud Vav Daled. So within this little Yud, this singular point, this indivisible atomic point, it turns really into Yud and Vav and Daled. If we take the Daled and the Vav of the Yud, we have a Hey. Okay, here's the Daled and here's the Vav. So now we have Yud K. And then you have the Vav. And then again, we have from the Daled and the Vav, we have Yud K Vav K. And the same thing we could do from the Ois Hey of Bereshis. We could take the Hey, which is Daled and maybe Yud, and put this Yud over here and create Yud K. And then we could create a Vav and another Hey. So from each letter of Yud K Vav K, you could create a whole Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke, which is similar to the mitosis process of replicating one thing into multiple versions of itself. And even, I don't need the word mutation, but the word adaptation, or somehow changing itself, adapting and permutating into something slightly different, because ultimately the Aleph turns into a base as it begins a creative process of going out and creating the universe. So what I've demonstrated today, the Siyata Dishmaya, is Aleph and mitosis. I've taken a biological process that's going on within all of us at all times, millions of times a second, and I've shown that even the holy Aleph, the invisible Aleph at the beginning of Bereshis, could undergo a process of mitosis, separating its Yud Vav from its Vav Yud, replicating itself, giving then the possibility of creating a whole universe through the holy oisios of the Aleph base. Thanks so much for being here. See you next time.